So one of the things that I noticed about the talks that were going on for this was there was really a understanding that this was about transformation. And we're talking about innovation, transformation, and how entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship and innovation has really transformed the economies in this part of the world, but continue to transform economies throughout the world. And the other piece of that is, as noted in the early session, was the fact that it helps in peace and prosperity. And it was noted that this area of the world has been at peace for quite a while. Currently, right now, one of the places I was supposed to be working earlier this month is in the middle of a devastating war in the Middle East. And at that point, we were told Erbil is where we were thinking of being. But peace is a great outcome of tourism and talking to each other. So let me begin by saying that everything matters. It absolutely does. And in the end position here, let's take a look back at an event that's still not over yet. The financial crisis of 2007-2009. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 55% of its value in a very short time. Now, if you look at the indicators that are out there now, they say, well, we're out of that. But at the same time, you look at the consolidation of wealth in the hands of a few, and there's a lot of people that are struggling at the bottom end of this, trying to get back up from it. So the major indicators have shown that we've recovered, but yet middle class and small to medium enterprises and stuff, they're struggling to make ends meet. So the group on this side, I don't want to get anybody with the laser, but this is someone who's actually, their life's done well because tourism has brought revenue stream to their area. And this is down in Chao Duc, Vietnam. And if you notice, and I know you can't see it from the back, but there's a little baby sitting right there. And as the tour boats would go by, this older gentleman would always have the baby wave. And I found out that actually the tour boat operators were paying him to have the baby wave. So they were able to make some money. But is sustainability a reality? That becomes the question, and we heard in the previous presentation by Brent that there's bringing a lot of people in, but can we sustain that? A couple years ago, I taught a class in Washington, D.C., and I went around and I took my students to all of about 9 embassies to talk to commercial officers. If you notice the quotes from these commercial officers, innovation comes up. Our goal is to be an economy built on innovation. That's from Australia. We will be focusing on innovative and new ways of doing business. That's from Qatar. And out of 9 visits to commercial officers, innovation always was mentioned. No one said, we don't plan to be innovative and we're going to focus on what we're doing. Everyone plans to be innovative. Social entrepreneurship is also a commonly used phrase as well. We are all going to impact the social environment. All of this business is built to impact social good. This is actually drawn from a Pakistani social entrepreneurship award. And they use the word cloud, which I love, and I use these in class all the time. And if you don't use word clouds, you should, because they bring out really what. And if you notice, innovation is there, social impact, the things that everyone talks about. Now, here's a cautionary comment that I heard, not on this trip, but on an earlier trip, 35,000 feet. And if we are going to be able to train our students to be innovative, we have to make sure that our system is in place to do that. And we heard some of the earlier presentations talk about what the challenges are that we're facing in education and the way things are evolving and innovating. So here's from a business executive who said, students today are great for getting tasks finished when you tell them exactly what to do. They work hard, but they don't know how to solve problems. They always want to get more data or run a model. Would someone please teach them to be innovative and solve problems and not simply ask for a template from a previous piece of work? And for those of you that are teaching, I'm not sure if you always, do you have an example of one that got an A? And then I can put that together. So our system, our education system, really needs to focus on making our students be able to solve problems and be innovative in the way that they do that. Now, building socially aware and global thinking, it's not easy. Things are complex and everything is connected. We get into measurement methodologies, though, that don't necessarily look at the interconnectedness. The only way that we're going to be innovative and sustainable is to prepare the students to solve the complex problems. It's to get out, to understand, see entrepreneurs, see social activities, and sustainable practices as driving forces behind innovation. Now, client-based projects, we heard about that earlier. Client-based projects are great ways. It's ambiguity, though, and students who want nice, clean answers aren't going to get them. They have to work hard. And I heard it earlier, was BlueSucon. So that's it. It's to take them out and get them and walk about and see. I do something in my class, we call it culture spy. And we tell students to go out and look around and see something that is going on about them and then come up with a product or a service that's going to solve that. And it's been pretty good. We've had some products that were actually launched. Things like bicycle seat covers that one would think, yeah, my bicycle seat's always wet after rain. So they developed that and they've sold a number of them. Now, I also put this, I put the Tangs department, sorry, don't want to blind you and landing the plane. Tangs department store. We visited Tangs department store a number of times, and Sherry Lim, who's the one of the managers at Tangs, she has an office, but she's never in it. She has an office that has a stool behind her desk because she doesn't really spend time on it. And she is really a BlueSucon type of person in the sense that she is always on the floor of Tangs department store. How many of you have been to Tangs in Singapore? Anyone? It's one of the oldest department stores. She says, if we are going to stay competitive and if we are going to be able to do our job, the answers and the questions are on the floor. It's being out on the floor that she sees things that she has to think about and solve. So Tangs constantly is reinventing itself. And when we think about the Southeast Asian region, the rise of ASEAN, trade has always been a driver, and commerce. This is where innovation occurs. From the Muslim traders, from the Chinese traders, through the Straits of Malacca, the amount of traffic that goes through there historically and now, 90% of the world's trade moves by water. 70% of that 90% of trade moves along the Marine Silk Road, which goes right through the Straits of Malacca. And if you do the numbers on that, that's an awful lot of trade and exchange of ideas and exchange of treasure. So history, we're still dealing with the same things. This is an interactive, and if you do want to see this, you can go to the UNDP report from 2013. But it points to the growth areas of the world. If you notice, it's south. It is the going south, and it is also focused here. Again, talking about innovation. Now, it's the system. It all matters. And I'm a macro marketer, and we have to think about facilitating the system to maximize increasing well-being for the entire broader population. The systems and the interaction networks all are connected in today's world. The 6 degrees of separation that we've heard about, oh, you go 6 people out. Actually, if you look at the numbers, the last one I heard is about 3.8. So with the internet and the networks, you go 3.8 people out and connect to anyone. Oops, laser. However, one of the things I also have heard is how bad Japan is right now because the GDP isn't expanding at the level. We also hear about the slowdown of GDP and all the damage that's happening. Well, GDP is a flawed metric. However, public policy people always are able to point to something they all know about, the economists. No offense to my colleagues. But economists, if you are simply thinking about GDP, it does not really capture, and we've seen the United Nations Human Development Index and others, and sustainable development is about replacing and keeping going. Can we do that? Quality of life matters. Governments, NGOs, we're all trying to impact positive life domains. And the metric that we look at versus GDP, maybe we're talking about all the system pieces. Can we increase education? Can we facilitate new technologies? Can we enhance the well-being of our populations? So the complexity and the robustness in new measures of growth, there's a growing understanding among public policy people that GDP does not provide a great all-encompassing measure. Japan's life, and I have many friends there, they enjoy their life there. It's an aging population, but the fact that the GDP has slowed down isn't really something that's impacted their well-being or their quality of life. So we need to train public policy officials to plan for evolution and sustainability in innovative ways. Macro marketing, well, macro marketing is the part of marketing that looks at all the systems and how they fit together. We are constantly looking at the market and the interplay between the market and the rest of the systems that fit in. George Fisk back in 1981 talks about technology pieces, allocating resources, all of these things. I'm a marketer, so everything starts with the market and starts with the consumer. This is from my colleague in 1997. The administrative systems, the knowledge system, education, executive, marketing system, all of these things matter. And you cannot really address innovation and thinking about how it contributes without looking at how it fits within everything else. Now, we added the technology system with an asterisk here because one of the things that's become clear today is that since 1997, technology has really created a wave. And so facilitating innovation with technology is very important. Also, consumer well-being. A lot of work has been done in this area, and think about the quality of life driven by consumer well-being. Now, there are people who say that, well, all of this materialism is destroying our life and it's a lot of waste. However, consumer well-being is an interaction with not just materialism, but about providing goods for satisfying, and a great deal of effort. This is our new updated model. And if you notice, best practices is involved here. We can identify different places. Governments, NGOs, and businesses act as catalysts, and they interact in emerging to develop markets. We can find all of these pieces, but as you look at this model and you go, boy, that's a lot of stuff on there, we can measure all these. And you have to account for the interactions if you are going to be able to optimize the relationships. You can't take one of these pieces out and say, we'll go forward on this. In the developing world, I often find NGOs who are doing exactly the same thing and they won't talk to each other because they're getting funding sources from their governments. And so Cambodia per capita at one point had more NGOs per person than any country in the world, and yet nothing was getting done. Now, I thought what I'd end up with, and try and stay a little close on time here, is examine some case histories of work that my co-author, Cliff Schultz, and I have done over the years, and talk about some of the systems pieces. Some of them relate to tourism. In fact, many of them tie into that. Bangladesh, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, the former Yugoslavia, and Indonesia. If you notice, most of them are Southeast Asia. That's my background. Former Yugoslavia, well, that's the Balkans. So let's start with Bangladesh. Bangladesh, people, when they hear of Bangladesh, they think, well, that's the one that's under India. We're not really sure where it is, but it's got lots of people. If you think about climate change, there's a lot of innovation that's going to happen there, because the Bangladesh area is really just the delta for the Himalayas, and as climate change occurs, there's about 180 million people who are going to be looking for someplace to go. And Myanmar is right next door. It's the only land bridge out other than India. What we did in the beginning on what we were working on was looking at the system impediments and to get things moving in Bangladesh. And we found that we were asked to go in and look at the legal system. And what we found is that the legal system was very damaged, and people would not enter into commercial contracts because they figured that they would never, ever be able to legally get a recourse. So what we did is we modeled what was going on in the behavior as it relates to the system. So an integrated theoretical and measurement process model looking at the entire system. And we found distrust, we found some problems in it, we were able to do some suggestions. So that's Bangladesh. Cambodia. The first time I was in Cambodia, we were getting shot at. And it's hard to bring tourists into Cambodia when they're shooting at you. So we worked on rebranding and developing an innovation there. Tourism is a great growth market, and it does not require massive infrastructure. It's a great way to bring in the foreign capital that's needed. However, in Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge had killed anyone who had any management skills, and so being able to move into that, Singapore Raffles Hotel was very active in retraining and bringing in managers. But in the marketplace, we did a survey and we found these were the words that survey people in the tourism industry thought. It was death, landmines, war, killing fields. Not exactly something that they want to recommend people to go to Cambodia. It's now become the kingdom of wonder. However, that was over a period of 15 years, 20 years now. They are now expecting 4.5 million tourists. However, one of the problems that we're dealing with there is that 4.5 million tourists all going to the same place at the same time. So you have to look at yield management issues. Do you want 1,000 tourists spending $10,000, or do you want 100,000 tourists spending $10? And the degradation of the system occurs. Everyone was building hotels, and now there's a problem with groundwater collapsing, drawing too much water out. The sandstone temples themselves are in danger of collapsing because of the infrastructure and the water table going down. This is sunrise at the ticket office. It is quite crowded now. Former Yugoslavia, the food system was destroyed. And again, the post-conflict situations that you run into, and I did like the creative destruction piece, because creative destruction is an opportunity. We go into post-conflict areas and had to look at the entire system to be able to recreate food distribution and logistics systems to work. People didn't want to talk to each other, but if you look at this bottom one, careful on the laser again, this one right here is Serbs and Croats, and if you know, the quote is, "The issue for us now is good quality food and products at good prices." It's a recreation of the system of bringing logistics and food together. In Vietnam, in the upper corner here, this is in the late 1980s. This is Ha Long Bay, and if anyone's been to Ha Long Bay, you'll know that it's now a major tourism sector. This is just a number of, not that long ago, coal gleaners literally walking along the shoreline trying to survive by picking up coal. The villages were literally starving going through, and yet we finally were able to look and develop systems and identify how tourism can do that. As noted, tourism brings people in. And the other thing, back to my peace component, in Cambodia and Vietnam, tourists coming through, people learned about each other. And all of a sudden, the care for each other versus we can go to war with you, there was a discussion about things, and it became a facilitating thing for peace. One last thing on that is, from Hanoi to Ha Long Bay, all along that strip, there are more and more businesses that come out. So 200 kilometers away from Ha Long Bay, the development is there because driven by tourism. So the growth of all these things are there. Now, out of tourism and into coffee, some system that says, well, we can grow coffee. So off they went. However, the problem was a lot of short-term focus, plant coffee, without thinking about what kind of coffee to plant, and the branding issue. So if we're going to think about innovation, you can be it by branding. What Cliff did on this for the coffee industry was look at, why do people buy coffee? How do they think about coffee? What are the consumer judgments about it? What's the culture? All of this stuff, again, mapped, measured, the methodology, trying to monitor it. Thailand. How am I doing on time? Are you okay? Thailand, a small island off Phuket. Social entrepreneurship, transforming and expanding agriculture and aquaculture. Palm and rubber plantations and fishing. Recognition that maybe there was a better way to do things. Koh Yai Noi, a small island off of Phuket, a Muslim island for that matter, and home to about 4,000 inhabitants. It's a great place to do research because it's a nice place. Ecotourism, and this kind of goes back to the ecotourism thing that we heard. I'm not sure if there is such a thing as ecotourism anymore. It might be the front end of mass tourism. And mass tourism then comes in and can destroy things. I started working with a company many years ago, sea kayaking, beautiful stuff. However, there are now 18 sea kayak companies. And there are money people from Bangkok and other parts of Southeast Asia who have come in, and instead of an ecological wonder, what we have now is 50 canoes, and if this was a home, if this was a cave, there'd probably be 100 canoes in this ballroom, all of them filled up with low-end tourists, smoking cigarettes and throwing stuff at the monkeys, who now come down because they're not afraid of people, and the tour guides feed them, and now they're overpopulated, and so there's starvation of monkeys. So, again, tourism is really great. It's a great way to bring in, but you have to monitor all the systems. Is it sustainable? We'll have to find out. And this is, I've been collecting data for 20, since the last century, we'll say that. And this is a quote from a 25 to 30-year-old male. I didn't get his exact age. The local people on the island need to recognize how important our culture is. They need to preserve this admirable culture. Don't let it go just because we open our island to travelers. Local people, travelers, capitalists should compromise. Local people should know what is best for them. And again, back to this idea of engage and empower the local population. Currently, we have a sect, the Tamagod Buddhist sect, that's come in and secretly bought up about 40% of the island. And they're transforming the island quite differently. And I'll finish up real fast with Indonesia. I think PMBS has been doing some really good things in terms of the education and interacting in social entrepreneurship with villages. When I was here last year, or the year before last, out to a village where brands were being developed, rice that was being thrown away, the rice husks were being reused and branded by the local people. Again, the empowering of local people and not the exploitation of the local people. So that's a great thing that social entrepreneurship can do in the developing world. And again, if you look at the middle class numbers for Indonesia, this part of the world is going to be extremely important over the next 20, 25 years. Market systems need to be fully evaluated in terms of their workings and their roadblocks. Everything can be measured, and it needs to be, because you can identify the roadblocks and what needs to be dealt with. In Bangladesh, it was the law and it was the commercial codes. In other places, it could be infrastructure of roads, etc. Marketing systems emerge, poverty can be reduced, wealth enhanced, QOL. Better paying jobs. The goal of macro marketing is integrated, systematic, sustainable policies, ensure peace, prosperity, and advance QOL, regionally, locally, and so forth. And again, let me end on the anniversary of 100 years of the Great War, the war to end all wars, the start of that, World War I. It's very important for us to remember we're in pretty much the same place we were at that point in time. And this part of the world has had 30 years of peace, a lot of it driven by economic well-being and social well-being. So, entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, innovativeness, education systems. It's been great for me to be here this afternoon and listen to my academic colleagues from around the world talk about the ways that they are being innovative in their different countries, and hear that we can make a better life for ourselves and for our children, because the numbers I saw for 2025 and 2050, those are not that far away. So thank you very much.
Thank you to all speakers.